Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, September 18th, 2015. I am Dave Biddle, and I am joined by Steve Hellwagon. Steve, some very interesting comments from Urban Meyer on his call-in show yesterday. It's always an action-packed hour, and yesterday was no exception. First and foremost, the zone read has been a staple of Urban Meyer's offense since he's been a head coach, since he took over at Bowling Green in 2001, and throughout his tenure as a head coach, it's been a staple of the offense when the quarterback gets the snap and then decides after the snap, the shotgun snap, whether they're going to hand off or keep the ball themselves. And they have various keys that they're looking at. Well, Steve, he said yesterday the zone read is no longer a big part of our offense, end quote. Very, very bold statement by Urban Meyer. And he followed it up by saying, well, it hasn't been for the last couple of years, which that actually is not true. It actually was a big part of the offense the last couple of years. But let's focus on the fact that he's saying the zone read is no longer a big part of the offense. Obviously, that's because Cardale Jones is the starter, and he's not very comfortable doing it, and he's got a cannon for an arm. But your thoughts on Urban Meyer's comment that the zone read is no longer a big part of the offense, Steve?
Well, I think about it that at various times it seems like the quarterback is making a read and making a decision. And at other times, it could just be a called running play for either the quarterback or the running back. And I think it's hard to discern for the defense which is which, and probably for the observer with the naked eye, it's probably hard to discern because everything seems to be the same execution. It all seems to look and feel the same, but against certain sets, they must have a decision before they get to the line of scrimmage of who's going to get the ball. And, in a lot of ways, that probably helps with how they set their blocking scheme and everything else. So, I don't know, Dave. I mean, he can say, the sky is blue, the sky is gray, whatever. I mean, it just seems that there have been quite a few of those zone read plays in a lot of the games. And with J.T. Barrett, it seemed to me that they ran it quite a bit. I would agree that with Cardale, it makes more sense to make the decision before the play is snapped what you're going to do with the football, just because it simplifies things for everybody involved. You don't have bad exchanges. You think back, he and Ezekiel Elliott had a bad exchange in one of those games late last year. So I think it was the Alabama game they fumbled an exchange. So, yeah, to me, it just makes more sense, maybe with Cardale in the game, to not have the read aspect of it, but to still show what appears to be that aspect.
Yeah, and you mentioned the fumble. It was actually the national championship game against Oregon. Cardale was a little indecisive, but to that point, they used it a little bit in the postseason last year, but very little. I've watched those postseason games numerous times, as I'm sure you have, as I'm sure every Buckeye fan has, because it's just a lot of fun to go back and watch those three games. For the most part, and I've said this many times, they really went away from the zone read. They scrapped the zone read for those last three games, and for the most part, now not including a couple plays here and there, if they were going to throw the ball, Cardale was going to drop back and throw the ball with that cannon of an arm, that 12-gauge of an arm. If they were going to run the ball, they were just going to hand it off to Zeke, and it worked out so well. It's a recipe for success. I don't know why Urban's saying, well, it hasn't been a part of our offense for the last couple of years. It has been. It's been the staple of the offense. But, Steve, even in the postseason last year, they really went away from it, and they didn't just have success. They had extreme success. So the blueprint's there. It's not like it might work. There's the potential is there that it might work. No, we have seen that this will work. Urban Meyer, I give him a lot of credit, even though he's not saying that this is anything new. This is something new. If you're a Buckeye fan out there, this is something, which I know you are if you're listening to this podcast, this is something new. Urban Meyer is going away from the staple of his offense, scrapping the zone read to a certain degree. Steve, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it is a kind of a landmark thing when you think about it. Tailoring what they're doing, obviously, to the strengths of Ezekiel Elliott. He only had 11 carries in the first game against Virginia Tech and 27, in the second game, and what's by design, and what's a read, and whose number is being called, I guess, is the question. And, it all comes back to, people are already starting after 2 games to ask questions about perceived clunkiness with Warner coaching the offensive line or play calling or Tim Beck or Urban Meyer, who's in charge, what's going on. And I just think that they need to probably simplify things and get back to basics, blocking, and, running the football the way that they like to set up the pass. And I think that things will be much smoother probably going forward after they've gone through some self-study. They claim that people are stacking the line of scrimmage against them and bringing exotic blitzes and different things to stop Ezekiel Elliott and make them throw the football. Well, we hear all about all these great playmakers. You don't see any swing passes. You don't see hardly any screen passes. You see the jet sweep all the time. Where's the ball to the tight end? I think they've completed 1 or 2 passes so far to the tight end. Seems to me there's a lot of meat left on this bone that they haven't even tried to pick at yet. And yet, you're coming back to, what are they hanging their hat on with this offense? I don't think anybody knows yet.
And speaking of that, one of the things they are trying to hang their hat on at times is that Wildcat to Braxton, and save for the best play of the college football season so far, and I know it's a young season, it hasn't went that well. And I know it's like saying, oh, well, the pitcher, he's been really good if you take away, May when he had an ERA of 10.50. But seriously, Braxton had the amazing play against Virginia Tech, the 53-yard run, the spin heard around the college football world. But for the most part, he's been bottled up doing that, and no fault of his own. And the element of surprise has not been there, Steve. 100% of the time when they have used Braxton the Wildcat, he has run the football. He's never handed off. He's never thrown it. Well, Urban's been asked about it a lot. I know you've asked him about it. Many people have asked him about it. And he continues to say this week, including on his call-in show yesterday, that not only can Braxton throw, but he will throw at some point. He even said on his call-in show yesterday that Braxton could throw the ball in a game this week. It could be against Northern Illinois tomorrow. Your thoughts on how everything has developed there? Braxton running the Wildcat every time so far it's been a run, the possibility now of Braxton throwing, and do you believe that will actually be a part of the game plan? Your thoughts on the whole Braxton running the Wildcat situation?
Well, Braxton did a great job against Virginia Tech. It's hard to have a much better game in your debut away from the quarterback position than that. Obviously some of it was direct snaps where I guess you'd consider him the quarterback, but, it's all semantics. I just think that, again, it kind of comes back to what we were talking about a minute ago. They're supposed to be so creative and so, have so many great, shiny weapons and all this stuff. I think what they're trying to do is put in the base, and then they're going to work variations off the base. Like, for example, let's say Braxton takes the direct snap and runs to his right. At some point, he is going to flip that thing to Jalen Marshall or Dontre Wilson, who is coming right by him, because you've got everybody moving to one direction. Give it to one of your other fast players going the other direction and take advantage of that. We haven't seen that. As you said, he hasn't distributed the ball yet to anybody. So, as we said, there are so many ways that they can attack defenses. I think for Hawaii, they just figured just throw our helmets out there and it'll be okay, and they did end up with 38 points, 7 of it on defense. But I think that there's much more out there that they've tested in practice that we haven't seen, haven't scratched the surface of. And, I guess I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, because a minute ago I was like, you need to keep it simple. And now I'm like, okay, you got 10 playmakers, score touchdowns with 10 playmakers, I guess. I don't know. It's just got to work. Whatever it is that they want to do, they got to do. It's got to work against the defenses that are put on the field against them.
Steve, moving topics, I love this. Jim Tressel will be honored at the game tomorrow. The first TV timeout of the first quarter, because he wants to try and get back to Youngstown State for at least part of their game tomorrow, which starts at 4 o'clock. Bo Pelini and the Penguins get going at 4 o'clock. I think they're playing St. Francis of Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken. But Jim Tressel will be honored. First TV timeout of the first quarter tomorrow. He is being inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. He's being inducted into the Ohio State Athletics Hall of Fame. I absolutely love this. Do you know who hates this is the Tressel haters? They are so mad about this that he's in the College Football Hall of Fame and he's the president of a university. And I also want to mention Joey Galloway and Tim Anderson are both also being inducted into the Ohio State Athletics Hall of Fame. So, but Jim Tressel, I just feel so good for him that everything's worked out well for him because he was so great for Ohio State. Ohio State fans are so fortunate they had Jim Tressel, and they were able to not only have a legend in Jim Tressel, but then follow him up with a legend in Urban Meyer. I mean, if you don't count that 2011 season, which, let's just forget about that. You follow a legend with the legend. That's very rare. But, Steve, Jim Tressel being honored tomorrow, it's going to be raucous. It's going to be awesome. He was honored during the Michigan game in 2012, was carried off the field. So I can't wait to see Jim Tressel on the field tomorrow.
I agree, Dave. I think it's well-deserved, and obviously he is serving out the 5th year of his show cause penalty, and you just wonder if he has any kind of itch to get back into college football coaching. I mean, Illinois is going to have an opening, and I've kind of openly opined that who better to hire than a guy that's won 7 Big Ten championships and a national championship as well if you're trying to win the Big Ten championship. So, perhaps he has that hankering to get back into college football. But again, I think it is tremendous that Ohio State, he'll be in their Athletic Hall of Fame, obviously, and definitely the College Football Hall of Fame, 4 national championships at Youngstown State, and then the one with the Buckeyes. And obviously, he was found guilty, or however you want to put it, of wrongdoing in the NCAA case. But again, I don't know that one isolated incident should wipe out what was 25 great years as a college head coach. And I think, he did, again, the good far outweighs any of the bad, in my opinion, with Jim Tressel. And, my father-in-law has a saying. He said, I would trust the man with my wallet and my wife. I would probably agree with Tressel on both counts that you're probably okay. The guy is, we know deep down what he's all about, and he's about the right things, and he's in a great job now at Youngstown State, and hopefully in a good place in his life. And if he decides he's done with coaching, that's it. But at any rate, definitely deserved.
Speaking of the game tomorrow, let's get some quick predictions. Another robust spread here for Ohio State to cover, 34.5 points. You go first, sir. They're going to cover this incredibly high spread against a very good team, at least a very good match.
Yeah, Northern Illinois is very good. 5 straight years of 11 wins or more. In fact, 2 of the top 5 winningest programs in the last 5 years will be on the field tomorrow with Ohio State and Northern Illinois. The others on that list are, I believe, Oregon, Alabama, and Florida State, I believe, are the other 3 that have won the most games in the last 5 years, as you might expect. So, that kind of says a lot right there. Yeah, they're a MAC team, but they have dominated that conference pretty much the last several years. Think about the coaches who've been through there. Jerry Kill now at Minnesota, Dave Doran now at NC State, Rod Carey is there now. And you just think that, again, Northern Illinois, very competitive. In the last few years, they've beaten Northwestern, they've beaten Iowa, they've beaten Illinois, beat Minnesota as well. So they can do it on the big stage, but Ohio State, I think that's a bit much for them. I'm looking for the Buckeyes. It's going to be a competitive game for a half, maybe 3 quarters, but Buckeyes pull away late, kind of like last week. 45-17, I have the Buckeyes defeating Northern Illinois on Saturday.
You have them winning but not covering. We have a very similar score, but I'm going with 52-17 Ohio State. So I have them barely covering. And I picked that score before I even looked at the spread. It's weird. I picked them to win by 35 points. The spread is 34.5. I have 52-17 Buckeyes. You have 45-17 Buckeyes. So there you go. And, Steve, you are, of course, the author of the wildly popular Undisputed Champions. Before we end the show, tell the listeners how they can get this book. I've read the book now twice. I absolutely love it. Everybody who's read the book loves it. How can the readers buy your outstanding book on the 2014 National Champions, Steve?
Yep, very simple. Just click on the search function on Bucknuts.com, type in Undisputed Champions, and the page will come right up, and you can get an idea of what we're talking about with this book. It's a complete look back at all 15 games, plus all the key newsmakers, the players, the coaches, some historical features to put everything in the proper perspective, and a great keepsake, I believe, and a great gift idea for the Buckeye fan in your family or somebody that I think they'd love it. And just go to Bucknuts.com, type in the search Undisputed Champions, and all the information will come up, and you can order it right there online.
Like I said, I've read it twice. I read it the first time, and it was so good I wanted to read it again. And usually I'm a guy I'm on the Internet a lot. I do most of my reading on the Internet, but this is the rare exception of a book I read not once but twice. So great job, Steve. Doesn't surprise me in the least that you knocked that out of the park. Thanks to Steve. Thanks to you for tuning into the show out there, listeners. I appreciate it. Hope you guys and gals have a great day and a great weekend. Take it away, best damn band in the land.